Okay guys, we're going to talk about our geometric self-portraits. This is the third year Adobe Illustrator project. Basically, I wanted you guys to know what a WPAP is. It's a Wheatus pop art portrait. It was originally originated by an Indonesian artist in the 90s. He would originally paint them by hand. Then in the early 2000s, once computer graphics started to become more popular, um, he started using things like CorelDRAW or Adobe Freehand before Adobe Illustrator came into play. So WPAP portraits do display a unique, colorful, and geometric style that is easily identified. You guys, when you see some examples of these, you've probably seen them out in the real world. A lot of times in the form of political posters or, you know, kind of high fashion advertisements, things of that nature. Today they are made in vector illustration programs like Adobe Illustrator. There's some examples right there. So those are his actual works. There's, Robert Downey Jr. and Emma Watson and Bob Marley. So what I want you to take from these examples is that although they're very colorful and they're very fun, I can still tell very much who these people are. There's no really natural colors used here. Emma Watson's hair isn't, purple and pink normally. Bob Marley doesn't have a ton of different colors on his face. But for this, it works and it looks cool and they're still easily identifiable. So I did one of myself. I used more muted tones for myself, so blues and purples and greens, along with the black. So basically what the process is for this, guys, you're representing faces that you're already familiar with, in this case yourself, with a new and different style while still being easily recognizable. So it's kind of a two-step process. It's going to be the faceting process and the coloring process, which are kind of done hand in hand simultaneously. To completely start, you do need a photo, and I hope that you guys, third years, you all got the message yesterday that you need a digital photograph of yourself. If you do not have one with you today, feel free to grab one of the digital cameras and get a quick photo. We're talking like a bust. You don't need a full body photo for this if you don't want to. A bust is fine. You need to have even lighting. It needs to be in focus. It needs to be relatively high resolution. Okay. So the ones that are most exciting are the ones that people aren't just staring dead into the camera, straight on. A lot of 3/4 turns, a lot of people, like, if you can show some kind of emotion in it. We had a great one a couple years ago. One of the students was just cracking up laughing. I think it was Bree. And it was beautiful, just because it was just so much emotion there instead of just a generic photo of her. Just to show you what some bad photos actually look like. So on the top corner, the top left-hand corner, that photo is a little bit too light. There's too much light shining on that little girl. Top right, it's obviously too dark. Bottom left, it's out of focus. So the best photo choice that we have here for this particular individual is the lower right-hand corner. It shows nice even lighting. I can see all of her details. She is in focus, and that would work perfectly. So you're faceting. So the human face is divided into facets using Adobe Illustrator's pen tool in this project. It's basically showing light and dark areas seen on the original photo, but you're of course not using the typical colors. Every facet is formed by straight lines instead of curved lines, so no curves in this whatsoever, and that's very important. So if we were to have a sphere and we were using a faceting technique, that's kind of what it would look like. It would look like a bunch of little squares or rectangles kind of stuck together, kind of like almost like a golf ball, I guess, kind of that kind of texture, instead of a regular smooth sphere. So when you're selecting your colors for this, we did use cooler color schemes last year for a lot of projects. I would like you to use something similar this time. You are allowed to have more than just 5 colors for this, though. It would be almost impossible to require you to only use 5 colors. Make sure that all of your shapes have a fill only with no strokes, so there's no strokes on any of those examples from before. And instead of focusing on warm and cool colors, just kind of focus on the lightness and the darkness of the color. Okay? So like I said, when I did mine, I limited myself to a palette of about 10 to 12 colors. Mine were a lot of purples and greens and blues, black and white. You can create your own color palette if you find a cooler color scheme, like KULER cooler, that you like. You can add a few colors here or there to it, like a few different hues of the same colors to help yourself out there. And at the very end, if I have enough time on this recorder, I'm going to show you an example of one that I'm working on right now. In my example, the one that we were talking about earlier, I did limit myself to about 11 or 12 colors, including black and white. That allowed me to put more focus on the tints or shades of the colors available, instead of worrying about what color everything was going to be. So when you set up your file for this, we are going to be printing it at the end, so it definitely has to be CMYK. Okay, so make sure when you're setting it up in Illustrator, it is not RGB. If you do later want to post this to any kind of, art account that you have, or to any kind of social media account to show everybody what you've been doing at school, that's fine, but you do need to take it into Photoshop as a JPEG at the end and switch it back over to RGB so it doesn't convolute your colors at the end. So the file size we're going to use for this project is 8 by 10. We will be printing a little bit larger than that, about twice the size. It's 16 by 20, and the reason we can do that is because we are working with vector graphics. Remember to lock your layer. So once your file is created, go to File Place to place your photograph into your file. Lock that layer immediately. Okay? That allows you to kind of work on top of your photograph without actually damaging it in any way. So then you're going to want to create a second layer where you will do your actual illustration. I'll show you at the end what that looks like. So in this example, you can see layer 1 has the photo of the little girl in it. Layer 2 is where he's actually going to be working. So now you have your photo in your Illustrator document and you're staring at it and you're like, where do I even start? After you've chosen your color palette, something that says something about you, my suggestion is to start with the eyes. In almost any portrait, if you nail those eyes, everything else is going to follow and still look like you. Remember to keep your shapes simple. I shouldn't see every single pore on your face. Less is definitely more with this project. You want the finished result to look like you, but still be kind of geometric. So make sure to use plenty of sharp angles and avoid curves. No curves. If you have curves, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so for really little things like this piece of light in this child's eye, the user did use the rectangle tool for that section, which would be fine, because of course we're not using a circle, no curves. Okay, but then we went in and we added this really crazy shape showing all this shadow and darkness in her eyes. Okay, that was done with the pen tool. Make sure your shapes are closed, guys. If your shapes are not closed, you're going to have a really hard time coloring everything. Another great reason to have your photo on a different layer than your actual artwork is you can kind of toggle the vision on and off to see like when you can see it and when you can't. You can see if you missed any spaces. What you don't want are a bunch of gaps everywhere at the end. It's a really common problem if people don't, check their stuff every once in a while. But you can see, with or without the photograph, I mean, that looks like an eye. So we are going to try to get these done by Friday, at which point we're going to print them out on the Mimaki at 16 by 20. After they've cured for the night or the weekend, we're going to adhere them onto sheets of foam core for presentation, so they'll look really nice up for open house. I think that's all I have on the slideshow, so cool. Give me just a second. Yay! Alright, so in this one that I'm working on, this is my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, I have, as you can see, 2 different layers here, and I can easily toggle the artwork on and off. Looks a little freaky, but that's okay. Also down here in my color palette, you can kind of see where I've like saved my purples and my blues. for her hair and her skin tone. She's a really big fan of green and of cool colors, so I wanted to do hers in those colors. But as you can see, my photograph layer is locked, so I can't injure it in any way. That's what it looks like without them. Okay. Guys, I will try to call in later this morning if you have any immediate questions that I can answer. You guys can take turns one at a time talking to me on the phone. But I do look forward to being back on Wednesday. So this one, you should be okay to start, as long as you have yourself a decent photo. If you don't, please go out in the hallway real quick and get a photo. Do not play around in the hallway. Just get a photo real quick and get back in here. All right, that's it. Thank you.